Hi, this is Carrie Schell from On Point Quilter. Today's video is going to be about drafting the Farmer's Delight quilt in Electric Quilt. The challenge in drafting this block really had to do with the number of triangles in each of the three outer rings. I will show you how I did some slight modifications to the block to make this very EQ friendly and allow you to piece it and to draft it as well. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to select work on block. I'm going to do a block, new block, and for this I'm going to do a PatchDraw block. And for this I'm going to bring in a quarter image of my block. So I'm going to import my image for tracing, and I'm going to call this Farmer's Delight Corner, and I just took the previous block I did and I just edited it down to just just be the corner, so I can just select OK. And now you can see again, things aren't exactly lining up, but I'm just going to modify my number of triangles so that everything is going to work. Now, for the pieced section, rather than using the circle, since I'm only doing a quarter block, I'm going to go ahead and do an arc. And for this arc, I'm trying to come up with something where I can have pretty good divisions basically between the center section and those three outside arcs. And this one here is 24, but when I started to actually look at it, this is going up 3, and this one I'd have to go up 4, and I really want to keep the diameter the same. So after playing a bit, I decided that I actually preferred 20 rings. I can use 3 rings for each set. I'm just going to show you an example here. So I'm going to use my PatchDraw tool, and I'm just going to show you quickly basically the shape that I need to fill in here. And if I fill that autofill, I can see that I'm covering that, and then if I do the next, I can go up 3 rings, and then the last one I can go up 3 rings. It's going to make it a little bit taller, but I think it's going to be very visually appealing, and I also can work with this center. So I'm not going to go ahead and keep this because I really don't need that any longer, but I'm going to start in the center and I'm going to work my way out. So I've got 20 rings, and my spokes are going to need to be modified for each of those different sections. So if I zoom in and I look at this this first set of kite types of images, there's going to be 3 in there. So, and I need to have both a lower and an upper point, which means I'm going to need 6 spokes. And so if I change it to 6, you can start to see where the image would emerge. So I'm going to pick up my PatchDraw tool, and I'm just going to start connecting the points of the grid here. And I can bring this all the way down and overlap with a circle, or I can just bring it to here. And when I go back to the first point, I double click and it's going to fill in. Now once I've got the first one done, I can pick it up, I can clone, and I can rotate it twice, and then I can drop that into place, and I can clone and rotate again, and again I'm going to rotate twice. And so I've got those 3 pieces done, and I can also then do the background here. And because I'm using the poly arc rather than the polyline, when there is a curve, it's going to follow that curve. And so this gives me a very nice image to work with. And that's one of the advantages of working in PatchDraw here. And the last one. And for this one, I can just do that and double click, and I've got the center done. So we now have the center section. And now for the next group. And if you recall, I mentioned that there were 27 triangles in the full circle. And what I decided is I needed to get something that was divisible by 4. And so that meant if I went up to 28, then for each quarter section, I can have 7 triangles. And so if I want 7 triangles for my spokes, I'm going to need to double that and put 14 in. So when I do that, now again, when I'm using my PollyDraw, I can follow that along, and for the top, and double click. Now again, once I've got 2 of them done, I can use my pick tool, and if my shift key is down, I can select both of those, and I can clone and rotate twice, and then drag it into place. So I'm just going to keep cloning and rotating. And I like always cloning the most recent one, because then you only need to do 2 clicks, whereas if you go and just keep doing paste of the first one, you've got more rotations that you have to keep track of. Now for this last one here, it sort of is hanging out, and I can solve that by using the shape tool. Just select that point, and it will, I can snap that, move that and snap that in place. And for the last one here, I can just fill that in. So we now have the next set of arcs, or the next ring done. Now for the next group, if I counted around my whole circle, there were 34. Again, not divisible by 4, but if I bring it up to 36, it is. And so if I bring it up to 36, it means I will have 9 in each arc. And if I multiply that 9 times 2, that means I need 18 spokes. And so I'm going to go up 3, and I'm going to just keep going over 1 spoke for each node. So I'm going to pick up the poly arc tool again. And again, I'm going to do just one of the bottom ones and one of the top ones. If I use my shift key, I can select now both. Clone, rotate twice. And continue to clone and rotate twice on that. And to fix that last one, I use the shape tool, select that node, and drag it in place. And I'm going to go and then just draw the one on this end, and I'll do a refresh. Okay, so now I just have 1 ring left, and around the circle there were 42. If I bring it up to 44, that's divisible by 4, and that would give me 11 in this this circle here. And so I'm going to go ahead and change the spokes to 22. Now I'm going to pick up the PollyDraw tool, and I'm going to trace that whole outside shape. And now I've got a quarter of the block drafted, so I can go to the color tab and I can color it. And so I've got that completely colored here. And Now I can go ahead and set that in a quilt. So for my quilt, I want to go to the Work on Quilt tab, and I'm going to do a quilt, new quilt, and I'm going to select a horizontal quilt. And for this, because I'm dealing with quarter blocks, and the layout of the original quilt was basically 4 blocks long and 4.5 blocks tall. So my layout for this one needs to now be, rather than 4, needs to be 8, and on the vertical needs to be 9. And the original size of the blocks was 16 inches, so I would want half of that, which would mean I want 8. And there aren't any sashings, and for the border, the only thing will be a binding, but I'm just going to go ahead and just delete that for now. So now, if I go into Layer 1, I can select the Set Block and go to my Block tab, and I can take my completed block and I can do a control, and it's going to fill all of them in. And now I'm going to select the rotate block with the Alt key. And this is a fairly complex block, so let me do another. And this at least gives me some in place. I still have to fix some others, but now I can just go and select individual blocks and rotate them. Now, the original quilt also had a plain border just on the top of these half blocks, and I think it was 1.5 inches. So if I wanted to, I could go to my borders and I can add. I'm going to uncheck the all. Actually, I'm going to keep it all checked and move everything to 0. Then I'm going to uncheck the all and just change the top to 1.5 inches. And now I can go back to Layer 1. And it's got that. I'll use my eyedropper tool, select the white, and select the block. Now, this does have the block lines in it, which would make it not look quite like, again, the picture of the quilt. If that bothers you, one of the things you can do is right-click, and you're going to turn off the outline blocks, and you're going to turn off the outline patches. And now you can get a better visual of what that block would look like. You may have noticed that some of my patches are colored incorrectly. Again, I can just use the eyedropper tool. I'm going to select that, and if I have my Alt key down, well, I color those two. Use the eyedropper tool, select my gold, and now with the Alt key down, select that. And now when I do my Fit to Work table, it basically corrected every other block, which basically means everything is now working. So now when I do my zoom in, this is looking very much like the block. Thanks so much for watching. If you would like additional videos and tips and techniques, please subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.onpointquilter.com.